What's up, guys? So, I want to talk today about something that I have sit and thought and seen over and over and over again for the last 10 years as I've been consulting and mentoring. And that is, I have seen so many people fail in this business because of where they entered into the business at. The thing I guess I want to specifically talk about, you hear this number that 92% of the people that enter into the life and health insurance business fail out. First of all, I don't know, that seems like a made up number to me. I don't know that anybody really knows what that statistic is, but it is probably a high number of people that jump into this business and they're not in it a year, 2, 3 years later. Listen, when I used to have my agency, I hired a ton of people that had very little experience or talent that made a nice living in this business. And so, how can I take somebody that is not super talented, doesn't have a lot of background, maybe just got their license, and all of a sudden have a good track history of them succeeding, yet 90 some percent of the people that get into this business nationwide fail out? Well, to me, it's because I think that, don't get me wrong, you have to be a hard worker. You have to be focused and dedicated. You have to have some communication skills. You have to be able to multitask. There's definitely skill sets required to be in this business. But I think that the most important thing to figuring out whether somebody's going to survive and thrive in this business has to do with who do they go to work for when they first get into the business. That's most important. And secondly, what does it look like once they are in stage two and they kind of know the business? Who are they working for at that point? I think those are the biggest determining factors for whether somebody succeeds or not in this business. There's three different options in which people can start or live in this business. Number one would be a captive agency. Number two would be what I call a mini IMO, but you're really captive to that company. And then number three is an actual IMO where you're an independent agent. And so let me give a little more color on those just so we're on the same page. A captive agency typically is somebody you're going to work for. You might have multiple contracts with different insurance carriers, but they all run through them. They mandate that those contracts run through them. They're kind of like a boss, a company you're actually working for. Then the tricky little slide is the mini IMOs. They're not really an IMO, but they call themselves that. If they've got less than a couple hundred agents working for them, they're a mini IMO, which means they're getting their contracts from a real IMO, meaning that they don't have the top comp. Those companies are kind of deceptive sometimes because they act like they're a regular IMO. They act like you're an independent insurance agent, but your compensation is way less than what street level would be if you were with a regular IMO. And then at the end of it, obviously, is an independent marketing organization where you're building your own business. You're your own person. You're going through one or multiple IMOs just to get access to the companies. And then they have some resources that they might provide to you. I want to share, my story a little bit. Because to set this up. So I was born in small town, southern Iowa, and I had good parents. We didn't have any money. We weren't in poverty, but we didn't have any money. Then again, I grew up in the 80s when I don't know that anybody in my world that I ever seen, nobody had any money. We didn't know any better. I had a good a good childhood. It was a great place for me to enter the world into. And I look at people all over the world, that are born in inner cities or born in other countries, born in places where, boy, they just didn't have from the get. They didn't have a lot of the chances that I had just from being a human, from growing up standpoint. They were in a hole. In our business, that same thing applies wherever you enter into the workplace at. You can go work for a snake when you first get into the business. You might go work for a captive agency or a mini IMO, that they're the same equivalent of, being born into a third world country. Um, I think that's a good analogy. My chances of survival and success and being a happy human were probably higher based on, a two-parent household that loved me and, small town USA versus, somebody else that, was born in another country or in a real rough place in the United States that maybe didn't have two parents that were around to love them. In our business, that's my analogy. I'll get off of that. But in our business, there are a lot of pitfalls out there that somebody can say, all right, I want to get a license. I want to be in the life and health insurance agency or business. And they jump in and they go work for somebody that sold them snake oil. They went to work for somebody that knew this much. And that seemed like a whole lot more than they knew when they got into the business. They went to work for somebody that knew one product, that had one little marketing plan. And they said, if you do this, this, and this, you'll make money. And they go work for them. They go work for them for 6 months or a year. Maybe they have some success, maybe they don't, but their learning curve was real short. And that's all they learned. When I got into the business, I was really fortunate there too. I went to work for a captive insurance company called Great American Senior Benefits back in 2006. I'll just tell you a quick little story, but I got a call to come to an interview for a $400,000 a year public speaking position. I was at a point in my life that if somebody was going to offer me $400,000, I'd have taken that. I'd have flown across the country for that option. I get there and I get into this room, and it's a small room with a horseshoe tables all around it. I go sit in the very corner. Real quickly, as people start funneling in there, I realize real quickly that I'm in a group interview. And if I could have got out of there easily, I probably would have walked right out. But I stayed because it would have been uncomfortable to leave. And I listened to an hour-and-a-half presentation from the owner of the agency about the industry, about the company, and about what their marketing plan was. And so I knew that that chasing the baby boomer bubble and being in an industry where that's your target market, I knew that was a good thing. I knew that insurance had a lot of money in it. Now, that said, I had no desire to be an insurance agent. To me, all I could picture was growing a mustache, wearing a sweater vest, and door knocking, and that was not what I was going to do. This particular agency did seminar marketing, and I could tell by the way that the owner, the presenter, was laying it out that he had two things going for him. One, he had a very detailed marketing plan. I mean, he had it down to the wire of how to do seminar marketing. Number two, I could tell he was a teacher. He was a mentor. He liked to help and train and develop people. And I knew I needed that if I was going to jump into a new career. The third thing that really enticed me about them was he wasn't a product salesperson. It wasn't like, come work for me and we're going to sell this product. Kind of like I talked in my last little podcast, I knew that he was going to teach me how to sell all products and really become an advisor. So because of all that, I met him in the parking lot afterwards and said, I'm coming to work for you. I'm going to drive back to the state I was living in then, fill my U-Haul. I'll be here Monday morning. He laughed at me and said, slow down, Tiger. It doesn't work that well. I then argued with him and said, look, you're not going to hire anybody that's going to, produce more than I will. Basically, I sold him into, I'm coming to work for you Monday. And we did. And it was a great experience. I worked for him for 2 years. I learned how to sell all products. I learned how to do a fact finder. I learned a marketing program. I had an office to work out of. I had trainers to teach me. I had him as a mentor. I had all of these resources. I knew I was taking a pay cut by going to work for him versus going and being an independent agent. But I was getting a lot of value for that money I was giving up. And I think that is really important no matter where you're at in the marketplace. If you're just getting in, or if you've been in for a year or two, I think evaluating what you're getting for what you're giving up is something you should always be doing. I think it's a great place to enter the marketplace where I did, to come in with an attitude of, I don't care about comp right now. I just need to go find the right mentor. I need to go find the right company, the right place that I can get into this business. And I'm going to have somebody that's got a roadmap for how I can really learn this industry. I don't know. I say this now 20 years later. I don't know if I had those thoughts or not. I like to think I did, but it's definitely what I recommend for people at this point that are getting into the business. Is the most important thing is figure out a place that you can go into with somebody that's going to lead you down the path, that's going to always have your best interest at heart and try and progress you. I think that if you're in a captive company, it's a great place to start, but I don't think that's where you should end up. I don't think a mini IMO is where you should end up. I think they're stepping stones. I think ultimately where you want to get to is you want to get to a point where you are an independent insurance agent getting the most compensation you can get to and building your own business. But again, there are steps in there, okay? Giving up some comp for other resources, that can make some sense in the beginning couple years of your career. Let me back up here for a second. Let me tell you some things that I think you should be evaluating for the comp you're probably giving up if you're going to work for a captive company or a quote mini IMO. When I went to work for this company that I started the business at, I had a nice office. Okay, that helps. It was a place to go to work. I had my own office that I could meet clients at. There was a whole lot of agents around there doing the same thing I was doing, and so there was synergy. That was a really big thing for me in jumping into the business and having a bunch of people talking and being excited about it and learning all at the same time that I was. They had a really good training program. We had training, twice a week. They had a marketing program, like I said, so it wasn't just go get them Tiger. I didn't have to it wasn't somebody just saying, hey, go buy leads with your own money and here's my script. It was much more than that. Mentorship, the owner of the company really took me under his wing and really kind of cradled me and teaching me the industry itself. Those were all things that I was willing to give a lot of money up for in the beginning. After about 22 months, I kind of looked back and realized, all right, all that's great, but now I know the business. Those things don't have quite as much value to me now in year two, really going into year three, that they did in the beginning. And so it was time for me, in my opinion, it was time for me to check myself and realize that I wasn't getting the value for the comp that I was giving up, like I was in the beginning, like I was in year one and year two. And it was time for me to go and take the next step and go start an independent brokerage. That was me. Everybody's got their own timelines. Maybe you're quicker, maybe you're slower than that. But what you are getting in the beginning, your need to have a mentor, to have a boss, to work for a captive company or a mini IMO is probably a lot higher in the beginning. And at some point, you're hopefully going to outgrow what they have to offer. It took 2 years for me, and not because I was a slow learner necessarily, but because the owner of my company had a lot to offer. He had a lot to teach. I got really lucky with that. There's a whole lot of people out there that are jumping into going working for somebody or under somebody that you might zap all of the resources and intelligence and education they have to offer. You might zap that in 6 months. But I think keeping this evaluation tab, on the top of your mind at those checkpoints is really important. And when it's time, it's time. When you're no longer getting the value for the comp that you're giving up, it's time to move on. And I personally think, once again, that the ultimate goal for everybody with the life and health insurance agency or license, it should be to eventually get on your own, start your own business. Okay, with that said, if we've got to that point and we're now ready to jump to the IMO world, and for some of you, you're already at that point, Now becomes, how do I choose the right actual IMO? How do I choose the actual independent marketing organization that I'm going to get my contracts through? And that's tough because there's a lot of them out there, and you're going to talk to a lot of great salespeople. Um, to me, there's about 5 or 6 things that you should be evaluating on who you're going to run your business through when you're at that stage. Number one is resources. Resources would be training, mentorship, leads, you know, what else do I got written down here? Oh, another big one would be technology. And so break those down for a second. Do they have training programs, videos, mentors to continue your education level? I think that would be a big perk. I switched over and built my independent practice, right after year 2 because I thought I knew what I was doing. And I did to some degree, but I moved my business to some IMOs that they didn't have any help like there is now with certain IMOs out there to continue my education, higher level learning like management, recruiting, things that I'm going to really need to do here is now as a business owner. I think that there's a lot of IMOs that offer that now, and I think that's a big perk that should be evaluated. Do they actually have mentors that will help you? Lead programs is one of the reasons why a lot of people choose IMOs, and I'll tell you to be careful about that. Very few IMOs have their own lead programs. Typically, they are third-party lead programs that they have built a relationship with that they can offer their people to entice them into coming and writing business underneath them. And I'll just say this. If you look around, you most likely could find those direct contracts and direct offerings from those lead companies without that being a reason why you had to go to the IMO in order to get access to it. I'm not a huge believer in lead programs anyway. I think that I think that that's one element you should have in your marketing plan. But if you're living and dying on leads, things can get pretty dicey pretty quick. I'll just leave that at that. That'll be a whole separate conversation. I'm talking about leads at some point down the road. But it's one of the things that people use to evaluate IMOs. And then the last one I mentioned there would be technologies they might have that might help you along your way. Those are big ways in which you can, that's one sector in evaluating a marketer or an IMO. Number 2 is what's your marketer going to be? Make sure that when you're evaluating an IMO, that you're actually having conversations and talking with the relationship you're going to be talking to if you choose to do business with them. Make sure you're not talking to a recruiter or a sales manager. Their job is to recruit people. You want to be talking to the actual person that you're going to be doing business with on a day-to-day basis, the actual marketer. Make sure that you click, that you like that person. You have the same philosophies and goals. Make sure that he's going to be able to answer your phone call when you want to or when you need him. So many times when you're starting out into the independent practice, you're not going to be some big high producer right out of the gate. It's going to take you a while to build. Well, make sure that that particular marketer doesn't have a laundry list of agents that are supporting, that you're going to be low priority for them until you're a big volume producer. You want somebody that you can grow with from a marketer standpoint. But I think that's the biggest relationship you need to evaluate as you're searching through different IMOs. Again, I think that making sure that they've got some type of mentoring process, whether it's the marketer, whether it's somebody else that's going to help you develop your agency, whether it's just going to be you or whether it's going to be sub agents, whether you're going to have, just staff underneath you, but somebody that can help you build the roadmap from where you're at on day number 1 to where you want to be at year 2, year 3, year 5. I think that's a big thing. And then here's the big one: compensation. That is the biggest thing that is going to probably drive which IMO you do business with, which IMO you're going to run your contracts through. I am here to tell you that you can get a lot of comp above street level compensation. You're going to have most IMOs that are going to tell you we start everybody at street level comp and you can grow as your production increases. They're going to tell you that the insurance companies demand certain thresholds in order for you to get a raise. And to some degree, that is true. With certain products, that is true. With certain companies, that's true. But I'm also here to tell you that most of the time, an IMO, if they want to, they can give you more compensation than just what they call the average street level. Now let's see what you can do. I've had this channel for 5.5 years. I have never said this before, but I'm actually the vice president of an IMO. I've never said that because I never wanted my channel to be biased. I never wanted to seem like a recruitment channel. I want to put information out there just to help people. Never monetized. But I'm here to tell you that if I've got an agent that comes to me or an agency that comes to me, and even if they don't have much volume, but I like them and I think they're doing business the right way and I think that they've got potential and I really want them to come on board with my IMO, I could give them whatever damn compensation I want to give them to some degree. There's definitely room. Typically, for example, on an annuity compensation, street level might be 7%. The IMO is probably getting 9.5 to 10%. There's a 2.5 to 3% spread is what the IMO makes on an annuity, for example. Percentage wise, it's that way with all products. I may not be able to give them 2 points above street, but I definitely can give them more than what street level is. And all IMOs have that ability. Those things we just talked about, resources and marketing and, mentorship, those are important. But if you're at this stage where you're an independent insurance agent and you have your own practice and you're running your business through an IMO, how much you're getting paid is probably the biggest thing that would determine which direction I would go at that point. Because they're all going to say, we've got great customer service. We've got these lead programs. They're all going to say, we've got this great technology. And at the end of the day, most of them all have the same stuff with a different colored package on it. At the end of the day, you want to make as much money for your efforts as you can. And I just want to say this to you. Make sure that you get it the most you can. Okay. IMOs need to make some money too. They do put a lot of resources out there for you. But the biggest thing that you want to do is you want to get paid. So make sure you're shopping these people and these different IMOs and you're getting the most bang for your buck. If you're settling for street level comp and you've got something to offer, if you can prove to them you're a great salesperson, that you have a business plan, that you're going to go places, that you might be new today. Heck, you might even not be new today. You might even have proof of production right now, but just not a great number. But with some mentorship and some help, convince them that you can be bigger than that. I'm here to tell you that there's more compensation on the table than just street level comp. I guess I'll put a plug on this. You can obviously email me. My IMO is a boutique IMO, and we don't just take every Tom, Dick, and Harry with an insurance license and a pulse. We do really am selective on who we choose to do business with. But this message wasn't about a recruitment to come to me. You can do that if you want to. But I'm really just saying when you're shopping these IMOs, make sure you shop them. Make sure the relationship's there. Make sure your marketer can help you with more than just product knowledge. Make sure that they can help you with business development. Make sure they do have good technologies. Vet their lead programs and make sure you can't just go find that on your own. And really vet them from a compensation standpoint on what they're willing to give up in order for you to come on board and run your contracts through them. And it's not a bad thing to run business through multiple IMOs. I think eventually you want to find the right home because that's how you'll grow in all of your comp packages is by total volume, or at least that's how it should be. But evaluate wherever you're at in the stage. If you're brand new and you're going to go work for a captive company or a mini IMO, I think that's a great place to start. But don't do it forever. Do it until you've got the knowledge zapped out of whoever your boss is and there's not much left to get. Move on to the next stage of particularly a mini IMO or eventually an IMO. And when you get to that stage, make sure that you are choosing the right person to do business with. Because I'm here to tell you that if 90% of the people fail out in this business, a big percentage of the reason why they're failing out, it's not on them. It's on who they choose to do business with. So be smart in who you choose to do business with. Do the work up front to vet these people, research these companies, and find the right match for you. Hope this is worth your time, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week. I'm out of here. Bye-bye.